So, good morning, everybody. First, I would like to apologize for not being there. And I know that listening to a recording it could be boring, so I'm gonna try to make this quick. Goals. I would like to talk to you about goals, objectives, and learning outcomes, right? So, goals are a description of the general purposes of a curriculum. They usually refer to a statement of general change that a program seeks to bring about in learners. Goals reflect the ideology of curriculum, and they show how the curriculum will seek to realize this idea or to make it happen. Now, goals are generally derived from information gathered during a needs analysis. That's important. The purposes of goal or aim statements, they're also called aim statements, are to provide a clear definition of the purposes of a program, to provide guidelines for teachers, learners, and materials, and to help providing a focus for instruction, and to describe important and achievable changes during learning. Okay, this is all by Noonan, 2001. Now, the problem with goals is that they're too general. Yeah, they present the statements of purposes of a program, but they're not specific enough. So, in order to give a more precise focus to program goals, they're often accompanied by statements of more specific purposes. These are known as objectives, or also known as instructional objectives or teaching objectives. Now, the objectives generally have the following characteristics, right? They describe what the goal seeks to achieve in terms of smaller units of learning. They provide a basis for the organization of teaching activities, and they describe the learning in terms of observable behavior or performance. The advantages of using objectives are that they facilitate planning. Like, once the objectives are decided, the whole course planning, materials, textbook selection, and other related processes can begin. They also provide measurable outcomes and accountability, so you can measure the success or failure of a program to teach or achieve the objectives. They are also prescriptive because they describe how planning should proceed, and they get rid of all this subjective interpretation or like personal opinions, because they should be pretty clear and straightforward. Now, here's a small example. In relation to an activity that consists of understanding lectures, we can describe goals and objectives such as the following. Goal: students will learn how to understand lectures given in English, right? So it's pretty general. And then objectives: students will be able to follow an argument, theme, or thesis of a lecture. Students will learn how to recognize the following aspects of a lecture: cause and effect relationships, comparisons and contrasts, premises used in persuasive arguments, supporting details used in persuasive arguments, and that's it. So this is way more specific. It gives you point by point all the specific information you need. And this is all by Brown, 1995. Here it's important to avoid expressions such as will study, will learn about, or will prepare students for, because they don't describe the result of learning. They just describe what the students will do during the course, during the class. But you can see that yourself. So objectives can be described with phrases like will have, will learn how to, or will be able to. That's much better. Now, it is important to mention that we should always keep in mind that objectives should be consistent with the curriculum goals, or goal if it's only one. And they should always be precise. They shouldn't be vague or ambiguous, because those are not useful. Now, learning outcomes are statements that describe the knowledge of skills students should acquire by the end of a particular assignment, or maybe a class, or a course, or even a program. And they usually help students understand why that knowledge that they're learning or acquiring on those skills maybe, why they will be useful for them in the future. Now, when working with goals, objectives, and learning outcomes, um, you might consider using the SMART acronym. A lot of authors have changed the letters for the acronym, but it usually stands for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. Well, specific because you have to know exactly what you're going for, right? Measurable because it must be measurable and it must reflect success. And achievable, well, you have to ask yourself, how is the goal achieved, or what's the action plan, right? It must be achievable, right? It can't be impossible. Now, realistic, well, it's the same reason. It has to be down to earth. You can't expect that your students do something that you haven't worked with them yet, or you haven't taught them. And timely or time bound, because you need to specify a time span for that goal so you can check it and monitor its progress, right? Now, I don't want to extend for too long because I know listening to a recording is boring. So, content is really important, because it doesn't matter if you have really good goals or objectives or a set of learning outcomes that are great. If you don't have good content, then you will fail. Because making sensible, well-justified decisions about content is one of the most important parts of the curriculum design. If poor content is chosen, then it doesn't matter if you have some excellent teaching skills and your students, because the learning result will be poor. They will have a poor return for their learning effort. They could try super hard, but in the end, it won't be good enough.